The accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, without exaggeration, affected the entire world and demonstrated how dangerous radiation can be. People were killed and injured by exposure. Thousands of families were forced to flee, abandoning their homes and belongings. What happened became a dark chapter in the history of humanity forever. Now let's look at what exactly occurred. In the mid-20th century, humanity discovered a new type of energy, the energy released from atomic fission. It was a true scientific breakthrough. A nuclear chain reaction produced more electricity than gas, oil, and coal combined. From that moment, the global construction of nuclear power plants began. The Chernobyl nuclear power plant was built about 20 kilometers from the Ukrainian city of Chernobyl, which is how it got its name. For the workers, the nearby city of Pripyat was constructed, and before the accident, it had a population of around 50,000 people. On the night of April 26, 1986, the fourth reactor unit at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant exploded. The building partially collapsed, a fire broke out, and a massive amount of radioactive substances was released into the environment. Once it became clear that radiation posed a threat to the lives of the population, the area around the nuclear power plant within a 30-kilometer radius was declared an exclusion zone that had to be evacuated. The evacuation of the city of Pripyat did not begin immediately, but only 36 hours after the explosion. People were transported by buses with minimal personal belongings, being told that they would soon return to their homes. In total, about 115,000 people were evacuated from nearby settlements. Meanwhile, radioactive particles were carried by the wind across Ukraine, Belarus, the western part of Russia, and further into Europe. On the third day, after Sweden detected a significant increase in radiation levels and began searching for the source, the Soviet Union made an official statement about the accident. According to former General Secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev, the prolonged silence was due to the fact that the country's leadership did not have a complete picture of what had happened and feared panic among the population. Radiation refers to atoms that are unstable by nature, which emit alpha particles, beta particles, and gamma radiation from their nuclei. These radioactive elements destroy the cells of the human body at a microscopic level. The particles enter the body through air, food, and water, pass through the skin, and gamma radiation penetrates the body completely. Even walls are not an obstacle to it. In small amounts, radiation is harmless. Exposure above normal levels can contribute to the development of various diseases and negatively affect health years later. A high dose of radiation causes radiation sickness, and in the worst case, death. Immediately after the explosion, a fire broke out at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The roof of the building and the reactor unit premises were burning. The fire was fought by plant personnel as well as arriving firefighters. They received the highest doses of radiation, which proved fatal for many. 28 people died within 3 months. After the fire was extinguished, sand, boric acid, and lead were dropped into the destroyed reactor from helicopters to reduce radiation. Since the reaction inside was still ongoing, graphite, uranium, and nuclear fuel were burning. These substances melted, mixed together, and formed a superheated lava-like mass. The temperature of this lava was so high that it melted the concrete floor and could have reacted with the water located in rooms beneath the reactor. This threatened another explosion with unpredictable consequences, but the water was drained in time. Meanwhile, the radioactive lava continued to melt through the floor and descend lower. To prevent it from reaching groundwater, a long tunnel was dug beneath the reactor and later filled with concrete, creating a safety cushion. However, the main problem remained unresolved. The destroyed reactor was emitting extremely high levels of radiation. Radioactive isotopes were rising high into the atmosphere and being carried by the wind around the world. It was then decided to construct a reinforced concrete sarcophagus over the fourth reactor unit. Work had to be carried out in areas where equipment failed, and a person could remain for no more than 40 seconds. A large number of people were involved in the task, rotating in short shifts. During the operation, a tragedy occurred. A Mi-8 helicopter struck a crane cable with its blades and crashed. 4 crew members were killed. Despite all the difficulties, the sarcophagus was built in less than 6 months, and radiation levels were significantly reduced. The advantage of nuclear power plants lies in their enormous energy density. A small amount of fuel produces a large amount of energy. The heart of a nuclear power plant is the reactor, inside which are pellets of uranium dioxide. Within these pellets, uranium atoms undergo fission. A chain reaction is created with a large release of heat. The heat turns water into steam. The steam spins turbines. The turbines drive a generator that produces electricity. To control the nuclear reaction, special control rods are used. When they are inserted into the reactor core, the fission process slows down and power decreases. When they are withdrawn, power increases. The task of the plant personnel is to keep this process relatively stable. In 1986, an experiment known as the turbogenerator rundown test was being conducted at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The scientists wanted to find out whether, in the event of a power outage, the generator of the fourth reactor unit could, by inertia, continue producing electricity for the reactor's pumps for about 40 seconds, until the backup diesel generators started. The experiment was conducted at a power level lower than planned. Instead of 700 to 1,000 megawatts, it was only 200 megawatts. In other words, even before the test began, the reactor was operating unstably. To prevent it from shutting down completely, almost all control rods were withdrawn to their uppermost position. The emergency core cooling system with cold water was switched off. At some point, the temperature in the reactor core began to rise, steam production increased, and pressure built up. When the operator pressed the emergency shutdown button, all the control rods began to move down, but stopped halfway. Later, this was explained by the deformation of the technological channels due to high temperature. There was nothing left to counter the rapidly increasing power. Within seconds, 2 explosions occurred. The reactor was completely destroyed. Responsibility for the accident was placed on 6 individuals: the plant director, the chief engineer and his deputy, the shift supervisor, the head of the reactor department, and an inspector from the State Nuclear Regulatory Authority. The most active in his defense was the deputy chief engineer, Anatoly Dyatlov, who oversaw the test. He pointed to design flaws, arguing that the reactor did not meet nuclear safety requirements and that it was triggered by the emergency protection system itself. However, the prosecution found violations in the actions of the plant personnel, and the Supreme Court of the USSR arrived at the following conclusion: the reactor is not explosive when used properly. As a result, the plant director, the chief engineer, and his deputy each received 10-year prison sentences, while the others were sentenced to 2 to 5 years. In practice, all of them served less than half their terms and were later released. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, international experts determined that the RBMK-1000 reactor indeed had design features that the personnel were unaware of. In particular, the design of the control rods was such that under certain conditions, when entering the reactor core, they initially increased the reactor's power before reducing it. However, this was not the main cause of the accident, but rather the final element in a chain of events. Experts concluded that the RBMK-1000 did not meet nuclear safety standards and requirements. According to a 1992 report by the International Atomic Energy Agency, the Chernobyl disaster was caused by reactor design flaws, human factors, and a low safety culture. During the re-examination of the case, many of the charges for which the Chernobyl staff had been imprisoned were not confirmed. The personnel did not violate most of the regulations that existed at the time. After identifying the causes of the explosion, all RBMK-1000 reactors were modified. The Chernobyl accident is considered one of the largest in the history of nuclear energy. An area of about 200,000 square kilometers was contaminated with radioactive materials. Territories of Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, and parts of Europe were affected. According to the World Health Organization, up to 4,000 people died as a result of Chernobyl radiation, while other sources estimate tens or even hundreds of thousands. The topic remains a subject of debate. The difficulty lies in the fact that the effects of radiation exposure may appear years later. Around 600,000 people took part in likvidatsiya, cleanup operations, and millions more lived in contaminated areas. How many of them ultimately became victims of Chernobyl remains uncertain. Among the diseases caused by radiation are thyroid cancer, malignant tumors, leukemia, tuberculosis, cataracts, and others. There is no definitive data regarding an increase in the birth of children with genetic abnormalities. As for the environment, tens of thousands of square kilometers of land around the plant became unsuitable for agriculture. The soil and vegetation absorbed dangerous radionuclides. At the same time, many animal species thrive there, including bears, foxes, wolves, wild boars, lynxes, and others. There are no mutants among them. Over time, radiation levels in the city of Pripyat and its surroundings have decreased, but according to various estimates, the area will remain dangerous to life for hundreds or even thousands of years. Despite the ban, some people, known as self-settlers, live in the exclusion zone on their own initiative. In addition, thanks to numerous films, the city of Pripyat has become a popular destination for tours. Hundreds of people visit it every day. A dosimeter is an essential item for such trips. Illegal tourists are often referred to as stalkers. All the equipment that participated in the cleanup of the disaster received high levels of radiation and was gathered in one place for permanent storage. Today, nothing remains of that site. According to one version, the machinery was dismantled and disposed of. The 3 remaining reactor units of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant continued to generate electricity until December 15, 2000, after which the plant was shut down. The sarcophagus built over the destroyed 4th reactor unit deteriorated over time and was replaced by a new protective structure designed to last for 100 years. The Chernobyl disaster once again reminded humanity of the dangers of radiation and also played an important role in nuclear disarmament, as the use of atomic weapons can lead to catastrophic consequences and destroy all life on the planet. Lessons were learned to improve the safety systems of nuclear power plants, while the search for alternative energy sources continues. Chernobyl is a lesson that came at a very high cost, but it is essential to remember the mistakes of the past in order not to repeat them in the future.